Hopewell, how you doing?
Hey, my brother, how are you doing? How are things?
I am good. I am good. Should we say?
I'm glad to see my dear sister Sophie in the house.
Oh, is he in the building?
I see Sophie Makwena in the house, the head
Oh,
of international news for SABC. We love her so much.
yes, 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 yes. We love you so much, and it's good to have you here. I saw you posted about what Muchangwa said in that presser yesterday pertaining um to the restructuring. Geza was actually giving them nightmares, right?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that Mchangwa speaks on behalf of President Emerson Mnangagwa. When Mchangwa speaks, you are
Mhm.
listening to Mnangagwa. If you remember, Geza said something and he was kicked out of the Central Committee and he was kicked out of the party. That excommunication uh, did not happen to Mchangwa. When Mchangwa spoke, nothing happened to him. He disrespected the vice president the first time, and nothing happened to him. I mean, he went deep talking about the General Chiwenga's private life and all that stuff. Nothing happened to him, which means that he knew he's standing on on firmer ground. And yesterday he came back again, repeating what we had analyzed in the pieces that we had put out, that General Sanyatwe had been fired, and had been fired because he was not trusted. When we said those things the day he was fired, ZANU PF folks were saying, no, you don't understand what's going on. But Mchangwa, with his, uh, I would say, power that he gets from Emerson Mnangagwa, came and said it. And nothing again is going to happen to him within the ZANU PF institution. So what we heard yesterday was actually Emerson Mnangagwa. He would have sent him to say, go and do a press conference and say A, B, C, D. Emerson feels emboldened because General Mchangwa has never moved since the coup. He has never moved. He's been pushed around, kicked around, and he's not been able to do anything to push back or to show that he has got power. He has not been able to do that. He's a powerless man. If you remember the analysis that I put out, I think 4 or 5 days ago, I explained that politically he has been outmaneuvered. He has no political pathway left. There are only three things that can happen for General Chiwenga to become president of Zimbabwe. The first option is a coup, but that now seems like distant thunder because his right hand man, General Sanyatwa, was fired. The second option is an uprising. But for an uprising to happen, for people to go onto the streets, they need security guarantees like they got in the 2017 coup. The soldiers went on the streets first, and then the citizens followed. I remember when the coup was happening, I was in London and I was tweeting that soldiers are on the streets, and people in Harare didn't even know that a coup is now happening. It started, I think, around midday. They started positioning their tangers, and then the citizens were mobilized through the structures of the MDCT of Morgan Changrai. Now, one, you do not have security guarantees. Two, there's no opposition structure to mobilize anybody. The opposition has been collapsed, it's in Emerson's pocket. So there's no one who's going to mobilize anybody. Um, the third option that is available to General Chiwenga is death. If Emerson Mnangagwa wakes up dead, uh, he's a shoe-in. He will become president because that's what the Constitution says. But that's a very far-fetched thing to happen. So as it is, uh, the options for General Chiwenga have been shrinked. It's almost impossible for him to move and do anything. Now, the president had done scenario planning. Again, we had written about this, but people were not paying attention. Myself and Newswalks, we wrote about this. He had done scenario planning, and his scenario planning was based on the first case, um, and then the second case, and then the third case scenario. So the first scenario was a 2030 thing, where he goes to parliament, decimates the constitution, uh, and the second scenario was that if he's cornered by Chiwenga, he then finds a way of bringing in somebody who will succeed him, a person of his choice. Um, what Geza has managed to do and his team is for now to suspend the 2030 talk. Emerson Mnangagwa is not going to decimate the constitution as yet, on the basis of what has happened or what happened with M31. So M31 was successful in stopping President Mnangagwa from decimating the constitution. Even the opposition MPs who were promised $120,000 each to participate in making sure that they get a two-thirds majority are now terrified as well. They are scared because they don't know where the wind is going at the moment. So they are not sure. So what President Mnangagwa has done is to go to scenario number two. And scenario number two is uh, bringing in someone, that very person becomes his successor. So he has picked Kudakwashi Tagre for a couple of reasons, which I will state. The first reason is that Kudakwashi Tagre is a clansman. It's like Hamaya Mnangagwa is a clansman. They come from the same region. He comes from Shirugwi. Mnangagwa comes from Zushawani and Kwekwe. They are all from the Midlands. The second reason is that they've been stealing together. They've been eating together. So he knows that if Kudakwashi Tagre comes in, he will protect his interests when he's gone. The third reason is that Kudakwashi Tagre actually has the money to run a presidential campaign, which starts with paying off opposition, the crooked opposition MPs who are in parliament. They will get their money. He will pay off the branches, all these people. What we have seen so far is a vice president, Chiwenga, who's not prepared to use any money as yet, because we haven't seen evidence of anyone being paid. But everybody in Zimbabwe knows that the other side pays. So he's going to pay people. He's been running ZANU PF financially. So all those big Land Cruisers that citizens see being driven by people like Shiramasa and Obed and Pof, all those old guard that were consigned to ZANU PF after the 2018 election, uh, are being funded by Kudakwashi Tagore, and has been funding them for years. So he has got money and a bag. And that's a big thing in politics, because you can pay, you can buy, literally buy anyone in politics, whether it's opposition or whether it's inside ZANU PF. Our politics is like a business. It has become a business. Politicians are in it not to save people, but to make money for themselves. Very few politicians in Zimbabwe have got the nation and people at heart. So he knows that he can pay ZANU PF guys. He knows that he can pay those who are in parliament that he will need for anything. He also knows that he can go to the grassroots. This is the same man who ran Command Agriculture, where they looted billions, but more importantly, they still have that network where they were providing seed, maize seed, and they were providing fertilizers to people. So he's going to use that, and that will decimate not just Chiwenga but even other opposition actors that want to go in there, because we all grew up in rural areas and in the cities. We know kuti, if the elderly are given things, they are more likely, they become pliable, they're more likely to vote for that person that has given them things. So they will ask, Matunzi Richi, and they get these things from Tagwere. So that's the plan. The other element, which secures Mnangagwa's future if he steps down, is what is being talked about right now, that Tagure gets in. Muhadri has been asking to step down. He's terminally ill. Uh, if he steps down, is replaced by PV Sbanda, General Sbanda, who is Mnangagwa's relative. Um, a lot of people in Zimbabwe think that, oh, he's bringing in Ndebele vice president. He's not Ndebele, he's Karanga. So he comes in as VP, and Tagre comes in as VP, and Mnangagwa is president. When he steps down, Tagre takes over. What's being discussed now is who then becomes the VP to replace Tagre, and that issue revolves around Mnangagwa's sons. We don't know who yet because there's a tug of war within that family from what we're hearing. He's got one of his sons who's a deputy finance minister. He's got another son who's in the military, who's now one of his close security aides. So we don't know yet, but what we know for a fact is that Tagure is being brought in, and myself and Newshawks, we wrote about this some months ago. Um, when he comes in, that's the end of the general, because all the avenues would have been closed. And so the general and his people have to plan, and their plans have to be immediate. Emerson Mnangagwa is daring. He doesn't hesitate to make a decision, as we saw with General Sanyatwa. The demise of the general started years ago. It started when Emerson Mnangagwa removed the running mate clause. The running mate clause is the one that was meant to protect Chiwenga this time around, because what it meant was that they would have been elected together, you know, and he could not be fired. But the vice presidents, or the two vice presidents of the country, are going to be, or after that running mate clause was removed, are now appointed at the pleasure of the president. So he can fire Chiwenga today and damn the consequences. If Chiwenga doesn't fight back, that's the end of him. So I think that's where we are, and it's important to acknowledge that, although a lot of people were saying that Geza failed on Monday, in my view, in my political world, I don't see it as failure. He managed to push Mnangagwa to his second scenario, of not violating the constitution. Thanks, Uncle Jet.
Right. Thank you very much, for that. Because there's a document that I received some weeks ago. It was a lengthy, document that spoke to the 2030 agenda. That says that we are miscalculating this agenda. This agenda is not all about Emerson Mnangagwa extending his power, but it is an agenda that is geared towards the capturing of ZANU PF as a political party, because already the government is already captured by these Ziganandas, the likes of Kodakwasi Tagwire and stuff like that. So, but it was uh, geared towards creating a path that enables the likes of Tagwire to come in, such that there's going to be that consolidation of power on the side of Emerson Mnangagwa, even if it fails. But by bringing these people in, these people are coming in now to actually take control of everything. So by pushing Emerson Mnangagwa to go to 2030, it was designed to just facilitate this thing. But at the end of the day, it is not merely depending on Emerson Mnangagwa having gone to 2030, but it is it is about the events that are happening now, because these are the events that are being put in place to shape the future. So the coming in of Kudakwasi Tagwire into politics, and the kind of political language that is now spewing, it speaks to a gentleman who is now ready to take, the political stage, to be a decisive player politically, and to be a player that works towards the consolidation of whatever gains that these guys have amassed over the years. So yeah, it is quite interesting, and to read about these events, to see these events playing out in real time, because the people never thought, never imagined that you could see the likes of Taguire being brought into the fold and occupying positions politically. But these are events that are happening in real time, and they are speaking to the creation of this dynasty, the one that you've spoken about, and we are seeing this through this strategic repositioning of people. This doesn't have the Zimbabwean people at the center of everything, but it has a select few, those few who are enjoying, who are benefiting. It is all about them, and they are looking at this as a long-term project, and they are looking at this as something that is going to be for the for the foreseeable future, and hence we are seeing these movements taking place.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of a dynasty has been reported extensively. I think Newsworks is written about it. ZimLive, they've written about it. But there's a guy on social media called Majiros, I think Majiros, who has talked about it for years. And the problem with us as a people, we don't pay attention when things are being said. We're easily excitable about other things that are happening. But this issue, Mnangagwa is a serious schemer. uh, he did not become president by accident. He planned for decades for this. It goes back to the 80s. And this is what General Chiwenga doesn't have. He misses that. The fact that he's an army man, he's a soldier, and is dealing with a politician who was a spy, and who boasts about it, that he knows what's going on. He's a schemer, so he plans ahead of time. When he was removing the um, when he made sure that the Chief Justice term limit was removed, he was planning for a time like this. When he removed the presidential running mate clause, he was planning for a time like this. But the general was just sitting there. And whenever we mentioned these things, we were told, "Oh, he will do something about it. He's an army man. He's got the army." But as we have been saying, I said it a week ago, that if he removes Sanyatwa, that's the end of the game. In as far as the army is concerned, from where we are seeing it or where we are sitting, and that happened. And when that happened, Mchangwa came yesterday to confirm that, look, this is what we're doing. All the other guys, I call them the political puppies that are shouting about 2030. They are shouting for their supper. They want a space on the feeding trough. President Mnangagwa is very serious when he plans these things, because you see, he puts people that he has relationships with. If you are not Karanga, if you're not from Mashingo or Midlands, you either have a relationship of some sort with him, business, personal, or something, like people like Garwe, who's the former Selous Scout guy and is founding people that fought during the liberation struggle. Yeah, so let me step down and allow others to
Oh,
speak.
Oppo, just a quick
Right.
question. So, sorry. So, do you, according to your knowledge, was there that gentleman agreement between ED and Chiwenga that he would take over, as people always say? Do you think there was ever that agreement between the two?
Mnangagwa categorically said there was no agreement that he will spend a first term. Chiwenga's people said that they had that agreement. Then he rolled over into the second term, and the natural thing was for Chiwenga to then take over. But Mnangagwa has shown how ruthless he is. He doesn't care. He doesn't keep promises. And I'm writing my
Right.
book. There are a lot of.
Guys, can we move over to to the address? I think it's starting now.
I can't remember what was the question.
I tried that if you can,
Yeah, it was just between this talk of gentleman's agreement. Could Chiwenga would take
Oh
over,
yes, oh yes.
and then what would be Chiwenga thinking right now? Like, if there was that.
Chiwenga, if you want to know what Chiwenga is thinking, you need to go back to uh, the I think it was I can't remember if it was the Politburo or the Central Committee. Yeah, it was the Central Committee. When Mnangagwa was speaking, you could see that Chiwenga was shaking with rage, but he had to contain himself. He's an angry man right now. I was talking to some people in the military yesterday. These are people that are usually, buoyant. They are confident. But yesterday they were sort of. You could see that speaking to them on the phone, they were demoralized. I spoke to one of them today who said to me, "I'm so tired mentally. I need to sleep." Um, some of them feel defeated. I don't know how General Chiwenga feels at the moment, but some of them feel defeated. As I said earlier, I think for the general, the plausible option that is left now is a moment of surprise. Maybe if he has, unless if the soldiers, if the generals are pretending to be with Mnangagwa and then they will present a moment of surprise where we'll just wake up and the whole country is taken over by soldiers. I doubt that very much because, in Zimbabwe, money matters. The person who's loyal to General Chiwenga is General Sanyatwe, and he was removed. He's now a sports minister, just like Coventry was. I mean, the
Right,
position
Hopewell,
that.
Hopewell, sorry if you can hold. Kumana. What I didn't.
Yeah, so I was saying that General Sanyatwe was put in a sports ministry. That's how demoted he was. If Emerson Mnangagwa was serious about respecting this gentleman that helped him get into power, he would have done a reshuffle, put Opam Chungura somewhere else, and put General Sanyatwa at defense. But he didn't do that because, as Mchangwa said to the nation yesterday, they were emasculating these guys because they are not loyal to the president. And the president was putting people that were loyal to him. So for people to understand, Zimbabwean politics is very tribal. Zimbabweans pretend that they are not tribal, but they are very, very tribal. So the head of the army, or of the defense forces, of all the defense forces, Air Force, Ground Force, is General PV Sibanda, who is Edie's cousin, and is Karanga, and is from the Midlands. The head of the army now is General Matutu, who is Karanga, who comes from the Midlands. He comes from Kwekwe, ED comes from. Is Zapu. PV Banda is Zapu. Why am I mentioning this? Mnangagwa is decimating the Zandla command in the military because it is loyal to Chiwenga, who is Zandla. He's bringing in the Zapu command who felt that they were not getting the promotions. But this the Zapu command that is bringing in is not Ndebele, it's Karanga, it is people. So he's looking for loyalty, is what Mshangwa said. Uh, if you look at the key positions in government, they are all his clansmen. Uh, some pretend to be Manyika because they grew up in Manyika like Opa, but she's actually Karanga from Zimunya. So the president is a tribalist. This is what Zimbabweans need to understand. And when the coup was taking place, one of the things that Mugabe did was to remind Chiwenga that he was going to turn this country upside down because Emerson is a tribalist. That's what Mugabe said. And Mugabe sent Gideon Gono to speak to Chiwenga because Mugabe's plan was to give the baton to Sekeramai, not to Mnangagwa. He was doing it not because Mnangagwa is Karanga, but because of his traits, his behavior, which is what we've now seen. Uh, he said Mnangagwa is a crook. That's what Mugabe said. But He was an important crook to Mnangagwa, to Mugabe, because he helped Mugabe to stay in power, because Mnangagwa is a thug. Mugabe said to Professor Kahari, Professor Kahari said, why do you keep this guy? And Mugabe said to Professor Kahari, he gets things done. If I ask all these other guys like Sekeramai, 2, 3 days, nothing has been done, but this young man gets things done. That's why he was there. When Mugabe lost the election to Morgan Tsvangirai, it was Mnangagwa who went in there. When the opposition was giving them problems, it was Mnangagwa who captured the opposition and paid opposition members. You see, Changrai's spokesperson was the MP for Mavuku. James Maridadi is now Mnangagwa's ambassador. Do you think that it was accidental? All these things, it was Mnangagwa who was doing them. And it helped Mugabe to stay in power as long as it did. But Mnangagwa was not doing it for Mugabe. He did not save Mugabe in 2008 for wanting to save Mugabe. He was doing it for himself because he knew that the pathway to get to presidency has to come through ZANU-PF and through Mugabe. That's why they killed General Solomon Mjuru and then got rid of his wife. The same methodology that they used against Mai Mjuru, if Chiwenga doesn't fight back, is the same methodology that they are going to use against him, and they'll get rid of him. It will be so easy to get rid of him if he doesn't fight back. So I think where we are, we need to understand that as Zimbabweans, politicians use us and they knock onto emotional doors like tribe, ethnicity. When they say there's a Zulu, it's not that they are doing it for the Zulus or for Karangas or for Ndebeles or for Manikas. They just use that emotional thing because they know that people are gullible. So you start saying, Wekwedwa Pinda, as if he's eating on your behalf. I want to give your listeners an example of how tribe is so useless, and ethnicity is so useless in politics, and yet it's used. Um, One of the kingpins in Mashingo was Edson Zobo. Edson Zobo played the Karanga card, but Edson Zobo was actually not Karanga. Edson Zobo was Ndao. His father moved to Mashingo as a priest. And so he played the Karanga card. He became the godfather of Mashingo. And I remember when I first spoke to him about this in 1992 at Chevron Hotel, he was telling me all these stories, and everyone else that he spoke to about this thing, he would use the same line. I've spoken to a couple of people that had the privilege of speaking to him about issues about ethnicity in politics in ZANU-PF and so forth. He would say, but usazotaura izvozvo unondikwadzisa because ndikangozikanwa chete kuti handisi mukaranga ndaparara, because they use it as a card, emotional card, knowing that citizens are gullible. And I'll repeat what I said in Shona for those that do not understand Shona. Edson Zobo would say to me, explain to me that he's not Karanga, he's Ndau. And then the last line that he said to me and many others that he spoke to about this thing, he said, please don't speak about this. If you speak about it, I'll be destroyed, because they use ethnicity to whip up emotions. So Mnangagwa, you'll see very soon you start using ethnicity again to whip up emotions. But if you go to my village in Murewa, where the Zulus live, and if you go to Mapanzure, which is Mnangagwa's village, you find that my village is even much better in terms of development than where he comes from. They don't care about their ethnic brothers and sisters. They just use that card to whip emotions so that they can continue stealing. So Tagure is Karanga, is going to come in. And what the conversation that's taking place is that no other tribe should come in. They're saying the Zulu should not be allowed to come in because Chiwenga is a Zulu. They're saying the Zulus at their time, because Mugabe was in power for 37 years. But if you look at the suffering of the Zulus and Karangas, it's the same. If you look at Ndebeles, Manikas, they're all suffering. They all don't have access to clean drinking water. They all don't have hospitals. They all don't have jobs. They all suffer from the highest inflation in the world. They all suffer from, all these inflictions that we suffer from as a country. So I think ultimately, uh, to come back to the point and land, General Chiwenga will have to literally show his balls if he wants to get this. Otherwise, it's gone, as far as I'm concerned. If he doesn't fight, it is gone. And as I say it again, for the benefit of those that joined after I'd said it, he has three options. A coup, which is now far-fetched because his right-hand man, General Sanyat, was removed. An uprising, which is also far-fetched because people will go into the streets when there's a security guarantee that they will not be killed, um, and Emerson will not hesitate to use guns because he also understands this. And the third option is Emerson Mnangagwa waking up dead, which again is an act of God. So you can't really base your ascension to power through an act of God. What if it doesn't happen?
That is quite, interesting, right there. I think we still have got a lot, to learn about what is going on in Zimbabwe, because it seems as if, there's more to this than, meets the eye. Right. Can I bring in, another speaker? Lennon, do you want to come in?
Yes, Uncle Jed, thank you. It's just a quick question from Koma Hopewell. Would in the event that these three options that you have presented have not worked, would a Chiwenga Chamisa coalition work in favor of the general? 6 months, 9 months later, the three options have not materialized. Would there be a possibility that General Chiwenga defects from ZANU-PF and join hands with the popular opposition movement under Chamisa, and they fight Emerson Mnangagwa?
It's a it's an attractive proposition, which is very highly unlikely, and I'll explain why. Um, when you leave ZANU PF, it's difficult to fight from outside. We have seen it with Maim Juru. We've seen it with Jonathan Moyo. We have seen it with many other people, including original ZANU PF founders like Tekere. It's difficult to fight from outside because when you're fighting ZANU PF, you're fighting money, you're fighting the military, which is power, and you've got to have money and you've got to have power. Unless if General Chiwenga has got people that are loyal to him inside the military, and he can deal with the rigging of the elections. If you saw the last elections, they were not rigged by the army, it was FARS. And that was deliberate. Mnangagwa wanted to establish his own independence because in 2018 and 2017, it was the army that did it for him. And they kept reminding him. So he wanted to be independent of that institution. So he created FAS, which was outside ZANU PF, outside state institutions, outside state security, but run by people loyal to him within those institutions. Uh, if you've been listening, if you've been paying attention the past 3 years, um, Mnangagwa and his people have been uh, talking about Chamisa in ethnic terms, saying mwana wokumusha, umachiti mkoma wangu, this and that. If you remember the speech that was made by Chief Charumbira, when he said it's time for Karangas now and Zezure at that time, uh, and Nelson has verbalized this to me as well. When he talks about the Zulus and Karangas and so forth, because he's a product of that political system. And even when he whispers against people like me, he talks about us as the Zulus, although I'm not even the Zulu. So I don't think Nelson will team up with Chiwenga to fight his brother, as he calls him. That won't happen. Um, the option that is likely is if there is another strong opposition that is set up between now and the next election, if it happens, which is very strong. So when I'm talking about strong, I'm not totally talking about Mickey Mouse people who are in the opposition now. I'm talking about bringing heavyweights who are not necessarily in Zimbabwe uh, to work with elements that are disgruntled, that are in the army. That might work. The third thing is that what kind of change would a Chiwenga president supported by the opposition, what kind of change will it bring? I want to share something that is often misused and people lie about it because George lied about it. Um, in 2018, a, a Congolese businessman who owned mines in Bindura asked me to come with the British and EU ambassador. It was Catriona Lang and Van Dam was the EU ambassador to meet with the vice president. And I was reluctant. He said, "No, let's go. You're always bashing these guys. Let's go so that you talk, you tell them what you think." It was in August after the election. So we went to his office and we spoke. Um, and I explained that if you want your government to succeed, you have to put a people agenda on the table. And he asked me, what is this agenda? And then I explained to him that institutions must reform, um, the media must be reformed. You should stop attacking civil society and seeing them as enemies and so forth. The British ambassador was there when I was saying all these things. The EU ambassador was there. The general then took me to meet the president, and there was what's his name, former agriculture minister Perence Shiri, and I repeated the same thing. And when we came out of that meeting, Perence Shiri put his hand around me and he said, "Young man, you've got balls. You told him the things that very few of us are able to say." But I doubt if he was going, if he was taking them seriously. That's what Perence Shiri said to me. And true to what Perence Shiri said to me, they were never taken seriously. What the British ambassador had suggested was not taken seriously. What I had suggested was not taken seriously. What the EU ambassador had suggested was not taken seriously. We thought at that point in time they meant well. My sense is that ED had a plan already about how he was going to decimate the country, looting and all that stuff. At that point in time, I thought as well that the general was interested in listening and understanding, um, and perhaps pursuing an agenda that would make him look good in the eyes of the people. Because after that meeting, George Charamba did what he always does. He was in those meetings. He gave the story to a Sunday Mail reporter who then lied about what had happened in that meeting, in those two meetings. And I phoned this Congolese businessman and I said, "Look, you asked me and these two ambassadors to go and talk to your friends, but look what they're doing now. They're using this for propaganda, and yet we thought we were speaking to them in good faith. We want the country to move forward." And I then got a call it was a Monday from the general, very upset about what George had done. And he asked me to come to his office, and I said I can't because I'm at a funeral. I can't come to your office. Then I went the next day, and those are the only two times I've ever met him. And he said to me, "Oh, this Sunday mail thing." And then I explained he didn't even know what George had done. And then I explained to him that we came to speak to you with the ambassadors in good faith, but look, they're now using it for propaganda, and so forth. And he said, no, 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 we're going to sort that out. But somebody who knows him said to me, no, he's surrounded by people like Charamba and so forth, and they don't want this agenda to the progressive agenda to be on the table. That's why George Charamba now started attacking me with an article in the Herald in February, I think February 2019, saying that I was pushing an agenda to bring the Americans in and all that rubbish that he says all the time. So he's surrounded by retrogressive people that do not want to see change in Zimbabwe. The reason why they don't want to see change in Zimbabwe is because they prefer a chaotic environment like the one we have. If change comes even from within ZANU PF, it deprives them of the opportunity to loot, to plunder the country. So they don't want that. So my sense is that the people that surround the general are problematic. Some of them are very problematic. And again, I repeat, George Charamba is very problematic. That's why when the Geza thing started, I said, you know what, I'm not very excited about this because of the people that are around the vice president. He had an opportunity to show that he was different from Emerson Mnangagwa, but he didn't seize on that opportunity. He had an opportunity to go out there uh, and work with. There are so many Zimbabweans that I know that went through his office that wanted to go do good. Some that are executives in America and Britain, high positions and so forth. Last year, I went to a country in West Africa. And one of the senior ministers they said to me, "Oh my God, your country is now very, very corrupt. What's going on with the president? You know, there's so much corruption. So this is a virus that is in the system, and we must be prepared for worse if Mnangagwa prevails. If Chiwenga prevails, he will need good people around him that can help him. He's a soldier. He's not a technocrat. He's not a politician. So he will need good people around him, competent people that will assist him. And that is what he needed right now. When Emerson Mnangagwa carried out his coup, I was before the coup, a year before the coup, I had a meeting with the British ambassador and we were talking about other things. And then she said to me, "Oh, it's Emerson's time." And what it showed me was that his team of which is in the business sector, in corporate sector, like Edwin Manikai, people like Herbert Ngala, they'd been working the diplomatic corps. They've been talking to diplomats. They've been talking to governments. I don't see that with Vice President Chiwenga. If he's doing it, then it's very secret. I don't see it. But at least with Emerson, it was visible. You could see it. um, Me and a friend who was working for the
Sorry,
uh,
sorry, Opo, if I may just ask a question there, if you're okay with that.
sure, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So I do get the sentiments that you're expressing about Chiwenga, but I think if we're to look back to 2017, you would have shared similar, though not identical, sentiments about the now president Emerson Mnangagwa, and I think most people would have been hopeful at that point. But I'm just thinking, if one is to say your analysis of him back then was wrong, and if it was wrong back then, why then should anyone take your appearing to be an endorsement of Chiwenga? I'm not saying you're endorsing him, but I'm very live to the fact that this is just your analysis. But if I was listening to you and I listened to you in 2017, I'll be wondering, you got it wrong there. Why should I be listening to you now? Why should I even consider what you're saying right now? That's what I'm just wondering.
You don't have to consider what I'm saying. I'm simply explaining and telling you my experience with these guys when I interacted with them. You can believe what you want. The information that I'm putting on the table is in order for you to be able to come up with a position. I'm not giving you a position. I'm saying to you, the whole world, except for very few people, if people are going to be honest, the whole world got it wrong with Emerson. And the reason why they got it wrong was because people were so fed up of Robert Mugabe. They were so fed up of Robert Mugabe. Anything but Robert Mugabe. That's why it's so disappointing today that we have a situation where our citizens are now saying Robert Mugabe was better. Nobody thought that, anyone could be worse than Robert Mugabe. The point I'm making to you is that these people are all from ZANU PF. It's a culture of governance in ZANU PF. There's a culture of governance. So I'm saying to you to think that somebody from the same institution is going to be extremely different from the other, and also based on what we have seen with the 2017 coup, it will be a bit outlandish. Um, you see, if you look at everyone in ZANU PF who's in cabinet today, they're all involved in corruption scandals. So what you can hope for is to say maybe Chiwenga's corruption will be slightly different from Mnangagwa's corruption, but not to think that he won't be corrupt. Because there are so many corruption scandals that he has been involved in when he was the military and when he was vice president. At one point, in fact, if people trace Tagure's journey, Tagure started off with Simon Mzenda. When Simon Mzenda was running what was called Murefu Petroleum, one of the garages was on Beatrice Road, on Simon Mazoreza Road. And then he moved to the Mjurus when Mzenda died. And then after the Mjurus, he then moved to the soldiers with Command Agriculture. And he was now dealing with the Chiwengas, SB Moyes, and so forth. When they thought that Chiwenga was going to die and he was in China, he moved to Emerson Mnangagwa. So the reason why I'm telling you all this is that there is a trail of corruption around or following all these top leaders. So it's not to say that Chiwenga is going to be very different in terms of corruption. He talks about corruption. This is against corruption when he speaks, when he talks about Ganandas. And so is Mnangagwa, so was Mugabe. They all spoke about against corruption. But we should not look at what they say. We should look at what they do. If we're going to look at Mugabe, this is a man who gave his daughter 21 farms. If we are going to look at Mnangagwa, I don't even need to explain this. If you look at Chiwenga, again, he's been involved in corruption scandals. So nobody can tell you that they can foresee the future, that this guy is going to be kosher. No, we made a mistake thinking so that we could in 2017. And even the opposition political elites are corrupt. You see, corruption is not about political parties in Zimbabwe. It's just about the political elites. Some are less corrupt because they don't have access to the resources to practice their corruption. If you go back to the GNU days, you will find that Elias Nzuri was fired as energy minister because of corruption, but it was not pronounced as such. But he was involved in energy in petroleum deals. If you look at the deal that brought Billy Rottenberg's um, uh, what is it Shumbanze or Chirezi, where they do the ethanol stuff. It
Isumbazi.
involved it involved the opposition as well. So we shouldn't treat corruption as something that just belongs to one person. Mnangagwa is more corrupt today because he has more power. Others are less corrupt because they have less power. If they get more power, they could be more corrupt. But I wouldn't want to say that if Mnangagwa, if let's say Chiwenga teamed up with Nelson Chamisa, things are going to be very, very, very different. I wouldn't say so. What happened during the GNU was that there was the goodwill factor. Goodwill matters. People that were afraid to invest or to bring their money into Zimbabwe started doing so because Zimbabwe had dollarized. So there was not a lot of activity and improvement that happened, like factories were suddenly opening and all that. They just dollarized and it stabilized prices and people could bring in their
Could bring
money
in their money
and things like that.
and things like that.
Right, guys. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand, and then I'll bring you onto the platform to ask the question. Some of you guys mics have got feedback. I don't know kuti munenge muchiita sei nemamics enyu. I'm yet to figure out what will be happening, but yeah, let us just do that. So can I bring in the next person to ask you a question whilst we are waiting for Geza. Right, can I bring in Ti? Do you want to come through? T1, sorry, not T1. T1, are you there?
I'm there, Uncle.
Yeah,
Good
please.
evening to you today.
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, my man. Right. I need to get you back a bit, and my question is directed to the D Hope. It's actually a comment on his options that Ahura that you anger to rise to presidency. Well, regarding inini from my knowledge of the military, the position of the army commander is not very instrumental in the happenings of a military coup. Vakomana vekuzasi avo ndo vane influence. Ngatiti isusu from the brigade commanders and below, normally the general duty soldiers, not the officers kunyanya. We have seen coups happening worldwide, and the most influential rank, the most participating rank is a captain. Eh, So we are saying Kuchinja army commander is not that effective in avoiding a coup. Rather, having brigade commanders rotating, those atingati isusu is stopping a coup. Ndo chekutanga. Chechipiri, we would want to say kuti the former army commander Sanyatwe was demoted to the post of a minister of sports. I would want to have a different view. Uh, while people think Kutisanyatwa is more aligned to Chiwenga than Mnangagwa, I would beg to differ. Why do I say so? Sanyatwa was into retirement, akaenda kunoita ambassador, what. He was brought back by who? It was Mnangagwa who brought him back to lead the military. Achi retire, this one akaenda ku DRC kunoita ambassador, Mutapi. Right. Being the case, Sanyato Abba Ipapo, when he is being retired from the army to lead the Ministry of Sport, regai tichikuraudza kuti uku kuitisana mari. This guy will retire with his full benefits, and when he's out there, he's enjoying his full benefits, the power lieutenant general, then he also goes to get package yake ye ministerial post. Saka while some are saying he was demoted, this may be a platform of relaunching him into a very powerful post, but apa anomboiswa kusport for the meantime. This is my contribution. I can as well add on kana Dedi Hope wa respond up. Thank you,
Right.
Angojet.
Right. So, did you do you see, the moving of Sanyatwe from the army commander to being the minister of sport as not a demotion, but as a way of getting him to to get a pension?
Sanyatwa is
Financially, he has benefited more than he was doing Aripau Army Command.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. What more?
okay. I want to debunk the first point. I'm currently reading a book by Professor Miles Tent, who's a Zimbabwean, who's a professor at University of Oxford. It's called The Overthrow of Robert Mugabe, Gender, Coups, and Diplomats. It was released on February 15. You should go and buy it. It's a very good read. Coups that have been successful in Africa were carried out by generals, not by middle ranking officers. Middle ranking officers have carried out more coups, but they were less successful than those carried out by generals. This is not an opinion, it's a fact. You cannot argue with that point because it's based on empirical evidence of all the coups that have been carried out in Africa. You actually don't need to go and read that book. Just go on Google and check. That fact is there. So it banks your point. And then coming to the issue of the commanders that you're talking about, Emerson Mnangagwa removed all the commanders that were appointed by Robert Mugabe. All the commanders that are there now were appointed by Emerson Mnangagwa, not by Robert Mugabe. So they are loyal to the person who appointed them. The way commanders are appointed is that the CDF goes to the president and recommends that, Chef, there's this one. I recommend that it becomes brigadier general or major general, whatever it is. And all those key positions are held by people that were appointed by President Mnangagwa, not by President Mugabe. So those that were loyal to General Chiwenga were all removed. And to coup proof, he got rid of all the people that helped him to do the coup. So that point falls away. Then the second point of General Chiwenga or General Sanyatwa, you can't tell me that you are a commander of a country's army and you are made a sports minister and you say that you are being set up for big things. What big things? What else can he be other than being a minister or other than being a vice president? What else can he be? He has got two pensions already. He was the he was in the army as commander of the presidential guard. He's the guy who carried out the coup. His soldiers were the ones who carried out the coup. That's why you heard him talk about 45 degrees and all that nonsense. And he left and he became a diplomat. He became Zimbabwe's ambassador in Tanzania. And he came back, which was there was some bargaining that was taking place. General Chiwenga managed to get him back into the army. I don't think we can argue for whatever we think of Chris Mchanga with his point that the president has put people that are loyal to him in positions to command the army. I don't think President Mnangagwa would still allow Mchangwa to be spokesperson this evening if what he said yesterday was a lie. It's self-evident, guys, that this guy was removed because he's loyal to Chiwenga. This guy, ongari munyaya wa Chiwenga, pakarambwa Mary na Chiwenga ndiye akaendesa 10 cents. That's
Gupuro.
how close they were. So we can share opinions, but I'm just looking at what happened. What we predicted would happen, it then happened. We can share opinions about those. I respect your opinion, no disrespect, but I don't share the same opinion. And I don't think that someone would go in front of global media and say that the president removed this one because he wanted to put his loyal people. That's disrespect. Why would the president want to disrespect somebody that is actually trying to set up for big things? And why would he put him as a sports minister? If I was a president, and I'm sure the majority of people here will agree with me, if I was a president, I would have done a cabinet reshuffle, put Sanyatko in defense, put Mime Chinguri somewhere, energy or somewhere else, and not disrespect him to say you're going to be a sports minister. Sports minister, you're a junior in government. That's why it was given to Kesty.
Hopewell. So I don't know if you saw his body language here, General Senyat, for the outgoing, swearing in Ningi. He looked positive. Is he just playing a long game? Because his body language was actually surprisingly positive for somebody who think he's being demoted.
I try to avoid those areas because I'm not a specialist. I'm not an expert in those areas. You know, some people that read body language, they will be the best people to talk about. I'm not very good at that. You know, I don't know him that well to say that this is how he behaves. There are some people that behave in a certain way even when they are under pressure. And there are certain people that can't hide their anger, like Chiwenga, as we saw when Mnangagwa was reading his statement in the Central Committee. You could see that the guy is angry. His mind, his body was telling him that you should clap because everyone is clapping. He tried to clap, but he stopped because the mind and the body were not coordinating. But to say that Sanyatwe, they could have been playing a game. This is just perception and opinions, and it's a gray area for me that I wouldn't want to go into because I'm not an expert in those areas.
Right. I've received, a comment from somebody who is deep in the Zimbabwean political, matrix. They've said, they're listening, to this space, and they said, you see, Gerard, our type of politics is not a marketplace of opinions like we are seeing, my brother. Instead, from my experience, it is the battleground of systems where the unlearned wield slogans like swords, while the wise study the rules of power, the currents of influence, and the architecture of change. The tragedy of modern politics in Zimbabwe, especially, is not that men fight for what they believe, but that so many fight without ever truly seeing the board on which the game is played. To shout ideology is easy. To decipher the silent machinery of power, that is statesmanship. Listening to this, comment that is coming via, my DM, what are your thoughts in terms of the actual understanding of politics that the majority of the Zimbabwean people have at this moment in time, given everything, that is going on in Zimbabwe?
I think when I read social media commentary, I agree with that comment. And because a lot of people don't fight for ideas and a cause, they fight for personalities. So you find that Chiwenga's people will be fighting in his corner. Uh, you find that he's got his own sycophants. Chamisa's people in their corner, he's got his own sycophants. Mnangagwa's people in their corner, he's got his own sycophants. And when you go deeper, those people have no ideological rooting at all. Um, they're supporting someone who has not even necessarily given them a policy document. They don't know what the person they're supporting stands for. They're just supporting them because they like them. Regardless of the failures of that person, whether it's ZANU or opposition, we haven't matured to a point where we have civilized politics, where we discuss with each other. If I if I disagree with you, I must destroy you. I must kill you because you have disagreed with my point of view. That's the kind of politics that we have. Whereas in other countries, they have the kind of politics where they can go and have a drink and have dinner after disagreeing in parliament. Uh, in Zimbabwe, there are people that are friends across the political board, but they're afraid of being seen together. It means that our politics is backward. Chiwenga is not fighting for it's not an ideological battle. He just wants to be president. Emerson Mnangagwa is not fighting for an ideological battle. The core principles of ZANU in 1963 are no longer the core principles today. The current president is one of the biggest thieving presidents ever in the history of Africa. but he talks about revolution. And his core base, his social base, they jump up and down. Kuti nyika ino yakauya neropa. You know, if that's true that nyika ino yakauya neropa, then he shouldn't be in power because he's abusing the sacrifices of the people that fought for the country. But because we don't fight for ideas, we don't fight for ideology, we don't fight for principles, we don't fight for policy, all those things don't matter. So I agree with that point that, you know, to some extent, uh, the
Right. I think I've lost you in right there. I don't know whether you've received a phone call, but I can't hear you at the present moment. Right. Whilst we are waiting for Geza at the present moment. Oh dear. Right. We are waiting for Geza at the present moment. But Dr. Ian, do you want to come in?
Hey, Uncle, how are you doing? I hope you guys can hear me.
Yeah, yeah, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Super. So I'd actually wanted to firstly compliment your speaker, Daddy Hope. It's quite refreshing to get a very nice chronological, uh, canonical approach to some of the events that have happened over time and how they collate to certain perspectives and how they can be interpreted. So I found that firstly refreshing. But I wanted to raise or perhaps pick his mind on some points that he had raised earlier on. And the first one, of course, was I think it was preempted by Neje to say that in our analysis of Mnangagwa in 2017, we were all hopeful. I put my hat in that very hopeful ring. Being in SA, he had a meeting here at the embassy and they organized a nice big venue and so forth. I was part of those people that were there wanting to engage with a great hope, for what we would have anticipated. And I'm sure many were in that. But the question then lies in the fact that if at that point we read the room wrong, so to speak, and we now have a leader that is categorically worse off than the one that we all rallied together to remove, what then is any kind of guarantor that the discussions now around a leader coming from that same pool to really bring about the change and the dispensation. And then he mentioned something quite interesting, which I think sort of answers the question to some extent, and that was the issue of the culture, the leadership culture that these individuals are groomed under, and whether it actually has the focus, the prioritization, and the impetus to really transition the country to where it needs to be, or is just a case of Ngomandio and Dio, just a different driver. And so the question then is, to what extent does general bring in a different culture? And then thirdly, the point that we keep mentioning in our discourse around corruption, we always tend to encapsulate this, and this was probably around about the 2017 where it was, this term floated to the top, the people around an individual. We said that concerning Mugabe, and again, I think we tend to be saying that again concerning Mnangagwa and even concerning General Chiwenga. And I think to a certain extent, we need to actually hold the individuals accountable and stop necessarily deflecting to the Taguires or deflecting to the apparatus that is around the general that somehow quote and unquote disempowers him from being or doing anything, in that case, at what point then does he become qualified for higher office if he cannot deal at a lower office with all these so-called people around him that cause him not to be able to act and participate decisively in terms of where his position is, and so forth. And yes, I do understand that, as the piece that you read earlier, it's about having a deeper appreciation of where the power bases are. And he's been in the party long enough. He participated in the liberation. He should understand, how to transition the power, if at all his hat his name is in the ring. From what I can see, I don't think much of that. I think he's more of a consequential leader than he is somebody that is really the driving force behind the change matter, unless I've read it wrong and Geza is someone that being a military person is having their strings pulled by the erstwhile general. So I just wanted to get that perspective. And thank you again for mentioning the issue around the tribalism, because my question in all of this was, surely the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And when your enemy is down and your enemy's enemy is about to, you add your 3 cents to that process. But there's been a significant lull or quietness coming from the quarters of opposition, but you've given a good perspective of the tribal aspect that perhaps explains one part. Perhaps there are more factors on that. So I just wanted to get a perspective from you, Daddy Hope, in terms of, does the general, given the ZANU-PF leadership culture, really fit the bill, given our experience of 2017 to now? Or are we just hoping that in the process of changing, we as a electorate gain the, how do I call it, the muscle memory yekuchinja vanhu, and maybe that will jog us into a space of democracy. I would like to hear your opinions.
Thank you
Right.
so much. I think I think in terms of where people like you and I want the country to be, at the moment there are no leaders that have exhibited those skills or perspectives or provided a vision of where the country should be. Uh, in other countries, you'd find that competing forces in the ruling party or the opposition leader and his party would be providing a blueprint of where they want to take the country. But in Zimbabwe, there's no such thing that is well pronounced. These things they come out when it's only election time through a manifesto. But if you remember, ED is not somebody who is really interested in taking the country forward to a point that for the first time in the history of our electoral politics in Zimbabwe, the ruling party did not have a manifesto. ZANU-PF didn't even have a manifesto. He didn't even bother to have a manifesto. It's something that Mugabe at least took seriously, although he would then not implement most of the key things that were in that manifesto. So and General Chiwenga was part of that team. This is what I mean when I say Zimbabwean politics is more emotional and not rooted in ideology, policy, or principle. How many times do you see people on social media talking about the position on solar of their leader, the position of their leader on solar, whether it's opposition or whether it's ZANU-PF? How many times have you heard them talk about roads, hospitals? I often give this example because it really disappoints me. ZANU-PF, I know it's already bad, but I turned to the opposition. At a time when I went to Geneva, most of you would remember I gave a speech at the United Nations talking about how Zimbabwe did not even have a single radiotherapy machine. And that has been the case for 3 years. I got one in California. I went to the opposition leader and said, look, there is this company. It has offered this machine. You have got big hospitals in every city. In Harare, you've got about 9 clinics that are the size of half the size of of a big hospital. I will assist in getting the machine here, but they want to talk to you guys because you are the administrators. Nothing was done. This company said they wanted to talk to the health advisory board for the presidential for the opposition leader. There was nothing. I knew that going to ZANU-PF would be a waste of time, but I did. But ZANU-PF said, "Oh, okay, would really like that, but this is the wrong time because if you bring it in, people will start following you. They will start you use that for politics." I got 40 pieces of dialysis machines in Birmingham. Again, the same thing from both sides. I met a cardiovascular surgeon who told me on a plane that they did not have the whole country did not have a single bypass machine. And this young man is practicing in Cape Town. He said, I'm coma. The people that come for heart surgery in Cape Town, I do it. And my team of nurses are Zimbabwean. And I said, what do you need? He said, I need this machine. And I said, how much is it? He told me the price, 700,000. I said, okay, I'll go and see if I can talk to some people. I went dinner with Zimbabwean millionaire Shingai Mtasa, and I told him about it. He said he was coming up with some health center. I spoke to the European Union. They said it's something that they would consider. I then spoke to the opposition leader and gave him a plan to say, this is what you need to do. But I've done my bit. You now need to do the administrative work because you are the guys in government. When I say government, I'm talking about local government. Most of our people think that government is just ZANU PF. Today, we have opposition in government because they run local government and they run Beatrice hospital, they run Wilkins Hospital. I said one of these hospitals can then be used to be a heart surgery center. We get this machine through the EU, it comes in, if the cardiovascular surgeon comes back from Cape Town, is agreed that he would come back and he's based there. He has his private practice at Wilkins. You allow him to use the machine for his private patients, and in return, he does pro bono work for public patients. And the cardiovascular surgeon said, I'm coma. It's something that we should think about pursuing. Nothing happened. Go and even ask the Harare mayor, Jacob Mafume. He would tell you that I had these conversations with them. I'm not making this stuff up. I went to, when I got the 40 dialysis machines, I went to the current political officers at the British Embassy. They came to my home to discuss. There was a new guy who was coming. And they said, oh, we thought we should pass by and introduce you. You're one of the big journalists in this country. We want you to meet this guy. And then I said, oh, by the way, there's a Zimbabwean who's an engineer in the NHS in Birmingham. She has offered me these machines, but they need a water plant. They said, okay, it's something that we can work on, considering that they're coming from our country. I gave that to the opposition leader. Go and ask him. I gave him that. I wrote a paper. I got 10 fire engines in the UK and 10 ambulances. I phoned the opposition leader when I was with the benefactor. Again, they failed to do that. That's why I'm giving all these examples to explain that the culture in Zimbabwe is not about competency. It's not about doing what is good for the people. It's about people's personal political ambitions to either become president or to become a government minister. If you say these things, they come after you. You will see tomorrow, for having explained this on the Twitter space, they'll be attacking me tomorrow. That's the nature of our politics, and it's not just about ZANU PF. That's why Dr. Solomon Guramatunu said the problem in Zimbabwe is no longer ZANU PF. The problem in Zimbabwe is the mindset. The leaders reflect the way the people think, because the people are the ones who are the sycophants of these leaders in ZANU PF and in the opposition. So, I don't. As I wrote in my analytical piece 4 days ago, looking at the events leading up to M31, I mentioned that people are not saying they are ready to have Chiwenga because they think he's a great guy. They are saying any change is better change because of what they've seen. They saw terrible things happening with Robert Mugabe, and they thought Robert was the worst.